Thank you for coming here. My name is Sri Srinivasan. I'm a Senior Director of Information Security here at Salesforce. I serve as their field CISO. I'm super excited to be standing in front of you. I know this is probably the last session of the day, but I'm still excited to be standing in front of you to talk about trusted AI. How do we deliver trust in Tableau? That's going to be our talk for the next 30 minutes. Like I said, thankful for you to be here. I know you all have a choice, and you made the choice to be with me for the next 30 minutes. Housekeeping, Salesforce is a publicly traded company. We will be talking about stuff that is in the roadmap, so please make all your purchasing decisions based on what's in the product today. So our agenda today is going to be focused on trust. We're going to be starting with what's trust, why do we need trust, then we'll pivot across AI in Tableau. What are the different spaces we have AI in Tableau? How does it get infused into the product? We'll talk about our platform. How do we secure the platform? Then we'll focus around the AI core itself. And finally, we'll look into how do we deliver trusted insights. What is the output? How do we make sure that the output is trusted? So that's going to be the agenda for the day. So let's start with our trust imperative, right? As every organization starts to move towards this AI and data journey, they need to get the foundations and fundamentals right. And there's three major challenges when this comes up. I don't know if you've already seen this slide. If not, this is a great introduction to tell what's the problem. The primary problem starts with data gap. Recent research has shown that organizations, big organizations, have about 1,000 different applications. These could be your SaaS vendors, this could be your homegrown applications. And the biggest problem there is all of these are siloed. They all have their own data schemas. They all have their own little data pockets, and they don't talk to each other. So, for example, if you're a Salesforce customer, I'll just use that as an example. The same user is called a contact in your Salesforce. The same person could be called as a subscriber in your Marketing Cloud. The same person is called as a buyer in Commerce Cloud. The same person is called as a user in their IT systems. They're same individuals referred to as different personas, all siloed out. So if I'm not able to pull all this data together and bring them as one unified object, it's going to be extremely hard for me to deliver personalized experiences. Not just with personalized experiences, I cannot have uber cool AI deliver maximum value if it cannot read all the data into it. And that seems to be one of the biggest problems. On the other side, we're having more fun. On the other side, we do have the value gap. What we have seen is that only 30% of users are actually using data to make decisions in organizations. This is actually quite surprising, and this goes into the face of what we do at Tableau. One of our biggest goals is to democratize data. If we cannot get data out to customers to make decisions, why are we not able to do that? That's something that we've been focusing on and looking at as well. One of the biggest reasons there is that the data and the insights is not available where they do their work. It's not available in their natural place where they do their work. And those are the two areas that we usually talk about. But for today's session, we're going to pivot mostly into the trust area. A whooping 70% of folks from our surveys said, it's very hard to trust AI. I don't really trust AI. I have an issue with security and compliance. And that's where we're going to be focusing our session today. And of this, 40% of them said, I am not confident with the output that AI provides. I cannot trust it. I don't know whether it's right. And that seems to be their biggest concerns. The other aspects that they are concerned about are security and privacy. My compliance requirements. Is it going to do something that's going to make me out of compliance in certain regions? Is the response going to be misleading? How does the performance degrade because things change while your model isn't changing? And finally, like, hey, I need you to be an assistive technology. Are you able to explain things properly to me so that I can take better actions? So these are some of the big things that customers have spoken, and this is what the industry is saying. And at Salesforce and Tableau, we've taken all these things, and we have started to build trust from the ground up. So for us as an organization, trust is our number one value. If you haven't looked it up, look it up. Salesforce's number one value is trust. And how we define trust is delivering the highest standard in system availability, performance, and security. This has been our value proposition from the time we've been on, right? And so how we deliver this within Salesforce is with these 4 nice, amazing pillars, thanks to Gemini for making it more attractive. So we start with building a trust-first culture. What I mean about that is at Salesforce, anytime at Tableau, when a new product or a new feature comes out, it starts with a threat modeling. Somebody is there, one of our architects takes this feature, goes in, looks at it, and says, hey, how can this feature be abused by bad actors? How can this feature be used to do things that they're not supposed to do? So we start with a threat modeling. And across every single aspect of our software development lifecycle, we try to inculcate security in there. And we don't ever want to bolt on security. We want built-in security throughout our process. In fact, every dev team has a security champion who spearheads this for them. The next one is basics, like hygiene, like brushing your teeth, taking a shower. Cyber hygiene is very important for us. And we want to make sure this is rudimentary. Things such as vulnerability management, things such as security awareness training, things such as patching, things that are taken for granted. We're making sure that we're nailing those basics. The next up is going to be about secure innovation. What we have done, we're going to talk about this a little bit when we get into the platform. We have defined our Hyperforce platform in a way that we have abstracted a lot of these security aspects away from the product team. So they don't have to worry about, hey, is this going to be secure? Is this going to cause any other issues? They can start worrying about how can I innovate the best feature for my customers? How can I make my DataFam happy? How can I take all of their features and ship it out faster? Because security now comes built in to our platform. And finally, we're not just doing it for our organization, we're doing it for the community. Salesforce is very well known, Tableau is very well known for its contribution towards the open source community, because we know that we're only as strong or as weak as our weakest link, which is the humans. So we're trying to elevate the entire industry by contributing to the open source market. And how we do it in Salesforce? My team, we're about 1,500 people, 1,400, keeps changes. But one big thing to understand, Salesforce, although we have several products, our security team is one. So we take stuff that we learn from every single product and we use it across every other product for the benefit of every one of our customers. And this is how we do it at Salesforce. This is how we do it at Tableau. So with that said, let's quickly pivot and talk about AI in Tableau. The word AI is very, very loaded. Because right now, if I said AI, everybody would be like ChatGPT, right? That's the only AI we all knew. But as folks who've been using Tableau, most of us started AI way back when we were using R and Python to do predictive analysis. We have been doing this for a long, long time. So just to give you a quick understanding of a foundational 101 on AI, everything starts with patterns, right? That's the building blocks. We identify patterns that allows us to do root cause analysis, allows us to detect signals. And once we have these patterns, we're now able to go in and say, hey, I can actually predict things. I can forecast. I can tell what the next behavior is going to be. And this is where the evolution starts to take place. Once I have predictive AI, then I can augment it with prescriptive AI. I know what's going to come up. I can actually tell you what to do. What's the next best action to take? What is the next optimization that I need to do? And all of this got super hyper-loaded about a year or 2 years ago with the advent of generative AI. What generative AI did for us was that basically took all these things, provided us with a very nice assistive capability that allowed us to do everything that we already did, but now with more conversational inputs. You didn't actually have to know how to run a script. You didn't actually have to know how to run a command. You can start conversing with the systems. And the current evolution of this is at an agentic place. This is where basically we have systems that can now start to discern, that can think, that can rationale, and make actions on your behalf. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Amara's Law. You guys know what the Amara's Law is? Right, one no. So what it says is that we tend to set our expectations in the short term for technology, and we tend to underestimate what they can deliver in the long term. I think we're at that spot. Everybody has been overestimating what generative AI and agentic AI can do tomorrow, but we are not ready to understand what it's going to do in 5 years from now. And I certainly feel the way data analytics is going to be operated in over the next 5 years is going to be drastically very different. And at Tableau, we have started to infuse this. We have started to embrace this, like you've heard from Sadat and other folks. We've started to embrace this, and we've started to infuse Tableau AI into pretty much all of our product suites. And we deliver it in your terms. Whatever product that you're using, we deliver both embedded and conversational AI experiences across all of our products. When it comes to both server and cloud, it's more of an assistive experiences. When it comes to server, it's always been asked, Tableau server, the biggest advantage is I host it, I have everything within my infrastructure, I have total control over it. But I also want to use an external LLM to do stuff. So that's why we actually introduced Tableau Agent in Tableau Server. How many of you here have actually used Tableau Agent? Good, a few of you have used it. Great, I see a lot of folks who haven't. You should try it out. What this allows you to do is it allows you to get quick insights using conversational. And these insights does not have to be just numbers. This could be visualizations. And also it could help you build calculations, help you build visits quickly. And more importantly, the biggest benefit that this gives you is your organization has full control of your data. You decide where the data goes, you decide where the data sits, you decide how this data is being used. And just a quick behind the looks, because this is, in fact, a security session, we need to nerd out a little bit. Let's look at how it actually works. So I'm not going to get into every single nitty-gritty of it. I'm going to give you a high-level overview of how our systems work. Why is this important? Because later on, we're going to be looking at how are we going to be delivering trust in this. So when it comes to this, the biggest thing that happens here is Tableau server starts sending in. When you open up your agent, you start getting your input. You provide your intent. Once the intent is received, we pass it over to the LLM. And in this case, we're going to be using something that you bring in, probably OpenAI. And once we send it to the LLM, we try to understand what the intent is. Once we know the intent, we start the planning process. Agent then says, hey, this is what the user wants to do. I'm going to add a lot more of data to it. I'm going to augment it with a lot of different things. What's open in your window? What data sources are open? What filters are active? What are you trying to do? What was the previous conversation history? It takes all that, sends it back, and starts executing it. As it executes it, it does checks. It does more of, hey, is the data correct? Is it giving you the right outputs? Is it bringing in the things that I wanted to do? It does reflection, coherence checks, and then starts to build out the responses that you need. So that is at a very, very high level how Tableau agents work. In Tableau Cloud, again, we do have agents in Tableau Cloud. Works exactly the same way. One of the biggest differences is that you don't have to worry about your LLMs. You're not paying for them, again, directly with them. You're not bringing them in. Everything is handled by Salesforce. We make sure, Tableau makes sure that we handle your interactions with the LLM. And with that comes in the trust layer. That helps you have a better curated and a more governed experience with your external LLM providers. And to top it up, what does Tableau Cloud provide you with? And I'm pretty sure all of you here would have already used Pulse. Have you all used Pulse at least once? Right. So what does Pulse do? Pulse does exactly the same things as an agent would do, but Pulse allows you to deliver experiences. Pulse allows you to deliver insights that matter to you in the flow of your work. It's not just a big dashboard that you have to go in and start tweaking in it. It only delivers the values, that metrics that you're interested in. And how Pulse does this is, again, that's a little bit geek out, but I'm not going to go big into this. Basically, everything comes in. Think about insights as our muscle. This does all the heavy lifting. And the metrics is going to be our brains. A user comes in and says, Shri comes in. Shri wants to know, hey, what are my metrics today? It goes to the insight service and says, hey, Shri's in. What is Shri interested in? How do I know what's his importance? We go back to our subscription service and say, hey, what is Shri subscribed to? Shri is subscribed to these 7 metrics. Great, we get that information. I need to know what these metrics are. That's why when I go to the metrics service doesn't just say Shri's interested in these 3 metrics. It tells me more about the metrics. For example, how is this metric usually measured? Heartbeats are usually measured in minutes or seconds. Sales is measured in quarters. It doesn't make sense to put them other way around, like I have a sales per minute and heartbeats per quarter. Doesn't make sense. all that business knowledge. This is where AI infuses that into the metric stream. Also, the directionality. What does it mean if this number goes up? Is it good for my business or bad for my business? A churn, is churn good or churn bad? All those business metadata is all encoded into your metric service. Once it has that information, it goes to the data service and says, hey, I need all the information pertaining to this. And what the data service does is it looks at, says, who's coming in? Shri. I will not provide any information that Shri does not have access to. So if the user coming in does not have access to underlying metric, then that means that they cannot get insights on that metric. And everything is taken in, the statistical services jumps in, does the math, and then we get a bunch of insights. Until now, you've seen everything is happening within our Tableau and Hyperforce environments. Nothing's going outside of it, right? That's the beauty of it. We haven't sent any data outside of Salesforce's trust boundary or Tableau's trust boundary. We take these insights, we take the top 3. Hey, I have 7 different insights. 3 of them are actually interesting because there's a big directionality, a big change. That's what you need to be aware of. We then send that to an LLM, and we get an insight summarization. One of the things that I talk about when I say send it to an LLM, everyone's ears perks up. Why are you sending it? I don't trust this anymore. So for that reason, we want to spend a minute on what actually happens behind the scenes. As you can look at it, this is how your pulse screen looks. That big box that talks about today's pulse, that's the only piece of information that's coming from an LLM. You can actually turn off that feature, insight summarization, and still continue to use Pulse without actually having any LLM interactions. Every single metrics card on the bottom, everything is coming from predetermined code. We don't use LLM to do math. All of that is coming from deterministic code. So the biggest thing that's more important, customers tend to want to know when it comes to trust is like, I see these cards, which of these are you going to send to an LLM? If you notice, we're not actually sending anything sensitive. We're sending the period scope, metric, the change, the directionality, and comparison. Yes, granted, if you were to rename your metric name as my social security number, yes, that's a problem, but nobody does that, so that's not a big issue. And what is not sent to the LLM is the actual metric value. How much did you make? What was a trend? All these sensitive information are never sent out to an LLM. So an evolution of the Pulse is Pulse Q&A or Discover. What this does is basically it allows you to ask questions. Rather than giving you one insight, you can ask questions, conversational exploration of data. This is where now, going back to what agents did, this does it better by asking like, hey, tell me what's happening this previous month to this month. It gives you all the insights in a more natural language and also provides you with insights and metric cards that you can dig in and look into it. It not only does that, but what it also does is based on the responses, it looks at it and says, how do you want to dig deeper? It gives you some of the suggested questions here that you could follow up on. So again, this is how Pulse Discover works. Very, very similar, but I want you to focus on a couple of aspects here. One is that you do have that Hyperforce. We'll talk about that. I'm not going to skip on that. And we do have this trust layer. Those are essential key architectural components. Why? Because those are the ones that ensure there is security and trust in our products. And very similar to what happens in our agents, very similar to what happened in Pulse, same thing happens here. I send a prompt, it needs to understand the intent. Once it understands the intent, it augments the same thing with more information that it has, then gathers the data based on what access you as the individual user has. Once it gathers the data, finally it goes to an LLM to make it more consumable natural language. That's the whole flow that's happening right here. So the next up is Tableau Next. For those of you who have not seen Tableau Next, this is our agentic experience. And the biggest thing to look at when it comes to Tableau Next is you don't see Tableau here. Tableau Next is not built on Tableau Cloud. It's a completely different architecture. It's built on Salesforce platform. It's built on our data cloud. It's built on our core platform. It's built on our Agentforce platform. Again, the most important thing to focus on here is we still have our foundational Hyperforce. We still have our Einstein trust layer. Those are key, again, because that's where it's going to be focusing on when it comes to our trust. That's where we're going to be focusing on. All right, cool. We spoke a lot about the product. We spoke a lot of the other things. Now let's pivot on and talk about how do we secure our platform foundations. So finally, as promised, I'm going to come back to the Hyperforce. What exactly is Hyperforce, Sri? You've been talking about it for the last 15 minutes or so. You've been yapping around Hyperforce. What is this? Hyperforce is Salesforce's cloud-native solution. That is how we deploy our products into the environments. It is built as infrastructure as code, and this allows us to deploy in several regions quickly and more effectively and more efficiently and more reliably. And pretty much the biggest value proposition that comes with our Hyperforce environment is that everything is built in as code. Everything has a bill of materials, everything goes through a pipeline, it automatically gets deployed, gets provisioned. If there's an issue, we don't go into production environments to make any changes. Whatever happened with CrowdStrike some months ago, that's not going to happen because there's nobody in the production environment changing anything. If there's a problem, we kill it, we go back, change the code, we push that into production. And all of this comes with built-in security and compliance checks bolted on to these platforms so that when we deploy something that is production ready, it has all the security aspects built into it. And other two aspects that I want to focus on is going to be zero trust and service resiliency. Hyperforce is hosted on 3 AZs, which means that at any point in time, there's 3 different sets of your applications running, all in sync. So if one were to go down, automatically the other one would take its place, which means that you always have a very, very high availability and a very high uptime. Some of the key security aspects when it comes to the platform itself, we're going to talk about network security. These things come very much free for you. And for most of you Salesforce or Tableau administrators, you are actually oblivious to these things. These things are not even in your scope. You don't even have to think about these because these are happening under the hood. Everything is encrypted in transit, in rest. Everything from each of these services, right? We call it zero trust. None of these services are actually talking to each other with implicit trust. They are by design not allowed to trust each other unless somebody comes in and explicitly opens up a trust relationship between them. And this is the entire Tableau architecture that you see as in the one big screen. The biggest reason why I want to call this out, bring this up here is, again, to focus on the fact that all of our AI services are actually built into the same trusted platform that you've been using for the last so many years. It isn't something different. It isn't something that is somewhere else. It's all integrated into the same platform. Great. Let's now move from our platform all the way into our actual core offering. How do we, Sri, this is great. You spoke about the platform. You spoke about what's AI. How do you actually make it secure? And I think this could have a better appreciation from this crowd if you understand how this happens, because now you'll be able to understand when things go wrong, where could it have gone wrong? If you're not getting an output that you expected, why is that happening? And as administrators, this would help you a lot to understand. So we want to pull this up into like challenges. There are like 4 major challenges, right? It all starts with access control, just like with anybody else. Similar to what we have in our Tableau cloud. For any enterprise application, authentication is primary. And with Tableau, we do provide out-of-the-box user management and authentication capabilities. You could use whatever version of the industry best practices are available, whatever you're using within your organizations, we do have a solution to fit in for you. For some reason you don't have one, don't worry, we have APIs. You can build your own custom integrations with us. So with that said, the next up is authorization. What authentication does is it makes sure that we know who you are, you know who's coming into your sites. Authorization basically tells like what permission levels you have. For any of your Tableau users or administrators here, you all know we have creator, we have explorer, we have viewers, we have permissions, permission sets. That's how we would do this. But not only is it at that level, we can get granular to the level of workbooks, data sources, and if needed, we can get to role level. And all this is being achieved with our permissions. Next up is data access, right? There's a couple of ways to do data access. One is that I could just delegate data access back to the data source, whatever I'm bringing in, and say, whatever access you have to the underlying data, that's the access that you have in Tableau. Or I can say, you know what, I'm going to actually add in a layer here that makes sure that I can filter on rows, I can filter on your profiles, virtual connections, and thus I can add another layer of security model if needed. And finally, when it comes to all of our network security, like these are the things that are de facto given to our Tableau users. Things such as IP allow listing. This ensures that who comes into your site, you have control about who's accessing your Tableau site. External outbound connectivity, so inbound and outbound, ingress and egress. Both of that, you could control who, where, when those connections happen. You talk about clickjack protections. These are very rudimentary stuff, all of which is coming out of the box for you. The more important thing that might interest you here is all of our OpenAI or all of our agentic conversations. We provide services such as zero retention, data masking, ZDR. We'll talk about that in the next couple of seconds, but we provide that all out of the box. And this is not just for Tableau Cloud. This is the foundations that is required for us so that when we go into the agentic world, when we go into the agentic experience, everything is ingrained in the same principles. An agent cannot do anything different than the same thing. They have to abide by the same rules of engagement. Just because you're an agent, you don't get special privileges to access data or do things outside the bounds of what's supposed to happen. Perfect. We'll focus now on data security. When it comes to data security, right, we need to integrate with these third-party systems. We need to talk to these LLMs. And that's where the huge boatload of, remember the first slide, 42% of the people are worried about that. 70% are worried about entire AI. That seems to be a big number. And how we've solved this in Tableau is by what we call as an Einstein trust layer. Anybody here actually seen this slide before? Already know what Einstein trust layer is? One person, that's great. So I will continue to talk about it a lot more now. With agents or Pulse, right, everything, if you notice, first was to send some information. You can't just go into Tableau agent or Pulse and say, hey, give me a poem about Shree's presentation. We don't keep it open. Everything has to fit into a prompt template. There is a template for an action. So what this does is that this removes that ability for a user to provide us with rogue information or rogue inputs. So everything comes in as a prompt template, and it fits inside a prompt template, and it gets policies supplied to it. Next up is our secure data retrieval. Like I mentioned, where the data is going to come from? Is it from your PDS? Is it from your data cloud? Is it coming from your own on-prem systems? Whatever data that's being brought in, it has to be securely retrieved based on the permission sets that you have as a user. Once we get that information, we ground that information into the system itself, and this is all happening as part of our Einstein trust layer. Once we have that, one of the biggest issues with AI today is prompt injections. Basically, you're asking the system to do something it's not supposed to do, and you're tricking it to doing things that it's not supposed to do. And this has been a very, very common issue. Everybody has written about it, direct prompt injections, indirect prompt injections, and that's an evolving field. And that's why with our trust layer, what you get is that prompt injection defenses. These are heuristics and ML-based defenses that are already baked into the product. Once we have that, we then subject the whole input to a toxicity detections. We're using digital BERT models that are basically looking at the input to say, is this input toxic? Why? Because a toxic input is most likely to go create a toxic output. So we do that. Once we have that, we go ahead and do data masking. This is where we're now looking into things such as pattern-based data masking. If your data has names, emails, phone numbers, you can apply pattern-based data masking to make sure that that information does not go out to the LLM. Once we have that, we also have what we call as our ZDR. Every single interaction with OpenAI or any of our foundation LLM partners is ephemeral, which means nothing is persisted. Once we have that, everything comes back, the responses. These responses are again screened for toxicity. Once we have that, everything is set into an audit trail and feedback so that you can go back and check what happened, where it happened. And to make it easy, as admins, you get to see analytics dashboards that basically tell you what actually happened in your system. So this is how we make sure everything is trusted. Perfect. Now we'll move on to the output itself. Sri, the platform is safe. How you talk to the systems is safe, but how do I trust the output itself? Talking about the outputs, we're going to be talking about our semantic data model. I don't know how many of you actually had a chance to use our semantic data model. It all starts with our data layer, but Data layer is built for the IT folks. It's built to make sure that everything is categorized as tables and rows and columns. But however, the consumption layer sitting on this side is not really able to use that very effectively. So this is where our semantic data model jumps in. It takes this data information, it acts as an adapter, and makes it way, way more simpler so that the consumption layer can use it. It not only makes it simpler, it augments it and it enriches it. It's much more easier if I showed you an example. So everybody knows these things, right? This is Superstore. That is the data table that we've all seen. And we want to use it here. But how about we take this and we start to organize it, rename it, define it, enrich it? I've taken this and I've put it into buckets called customers, sales, and products. I've taken the customer name and I've said, like, I don't need the F name, L name. I'm going to get a customer name. I've created that. I've taken the date of birth and said, I don't need the date of birth. I want a calculated field called ages. And for every one of them, I've given a description. And not only is that, I've now started to add more predictive models. I've brought in likelihood to churn. That's a predictive model that's coming in. I've brought in the next best action. That's prescriptive model that I've brought in. I've actually brought in a customer profile that is coming from our generative AI models. Now, this is something my AI can use better and actually give you better results. An example? Great. I'm going to ask ChatGPT, how can I get more business from Sophia? It's going to give you an answer that looks pretty accurate, but really not of any use. Everybody, you go give this to your sales guy, he's going to be like, I know this, I don't need it. And what is ChatGPT great at? It's great at giving you a very convincing answer when it has no idea what it's talking about, right? Everybody has seen that. And that's where our data model comes into play. When we start to include our semantic data model, the same thing changes. The same data is now augmented with business context, metadata, operational data, the predictive data, everything that we've brought in. And what this allows us to do is now we're going to get a better data-driven, contextually relevant, and actionable response. Look at the response that's coming back here. It tells me that Sophia, who's a customer number whatever, and where she lives, and what is her likelihood to churn, and what is she interested in. And this is how you should proceed next. What is the next product that I should be selling to her? This is a much better response and more actionable and more likely to get value. The value proposition, the value gap gets filled here. Great. Finally, we're going to talk about monitoring and testing. Again, with all of our tools, monitoring, it comes in pre-baked. You don't have to go in and turn on an audit trail. You don't have to go in and turn on anything. Everything is done pre-built to you. Again, we're on this side of the pond. You guys take data privacy and you guys take privacy way more seriously. So we do have an option. If you're not interested, you want to opt out of it, you can opt out. But all of this information is available to you. What this allows you to do is, like, you can have dashboards that go in, give you feedback data about how many users are using it, what are they doing with it. It gives you a good understanding of your site's consumptions. Think of this as an extension of your dashboarding tools that you already have that gives you visibility into who's using what dashboards, how much users are being used. It not only does it, it actually allows you to look at every single interaction to understand what was sent in, what was the prompt, what was the response, was there any PII that was provided, was that PII masked? It allows you to go in and test your systems at large. So finally, to bring it all together, right? Security is not just Salesforce's job. At Salesforce, we've always been talking about this as a partnership. We as Salesforce will build the platforms, will build a secure infrastructure for you. You as a customer, you're expected to take in the security controls. You're suspected to enforce IP allow listing, MFAs, all the industry standard. And together, as a partner, we can build a more secure ecosystem that is foundationally right for us to deploy our agentic environments, right? So finally, this is, like we said, what we expect of our customers is you own your data, you own access to your data, you own how you connect your data, you own monitoring your data. That's all your responsibility. And what we promise is we'll make sure that anything that you put into our environments is held securely Anything that requires our platform, our OS, our encryption, all of that is on our responsibilities. And we do have AWS as our cloud provider, and they take on certain responsibilities. So this is how everything comes together. I know this was a lot, and I know we're almost at time, a little bit over time, but this kind of brings everything together in terms of how we achieve security and trust in Tableau. That's all I had. We don't have time for a demo, unfortunately, but that's all I had. And if you have any questions, I'll be around. But thank you all for coming here. Thank you, Europe, and thank you, DataFam, for showing up. If you have any questions, I'll be around. Feel free to stop by. Thanks again.